Good afternoon. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I'm really pleased that I started to participate in the conference right from the outset. It was really good to hear of the case studies and all of the activity that's going on. As Alex mentioned, I work for an independent, non-partisan think tank called Respublica. For those of you who are not too familiar with Respublica's work, we offer a platform for thought leadership and policy innovation, which often manifests itself in research reports, short ideas, papers, events, and discussions. So all of our work draws its inspiration from our founding principles, which seek to promote the importance of widespread ownership, competition, and devolved responsibility as key solutions to the failures of a centralized state and an unbalanced market. So just to give an indication of the direction of my 15-minute slot, I will be setting out the state of play, the paradigm shift we need, the role of government, a quick summary of the findings from our recent report, which you may have seen, the Community Renewables Economy, how government should respond, so some practical policy recommendations, and briefly concluding with an indication toward future policy development. Now, Respublica's founding principles actually set the scene quite nicely. So the state, we argue, has become centralized and standardized and is unable to deliver the services that meet the range of complexity of people's needs. The market, as it is currently understood, has facilitated the creation of monopolies and has precluded many from participating in and benefiting from it. So the UK's energy market is a prime example of this phenomenon. On the utility side, the market is dominated by just 6 players and has a total of 30 national licensed suppliers. To draw an off-cited continental comparison, which we've heard a few times today, Germany has not 30, but over 900 registered utilities, and many of them being local. On the production side, in Germany, community energy accounts for 46% of energy produced from renewables, whereas in the UK, this figure stands at just 0.3%. So due to the gradual nationalisation and liberalisation of the UK's energy market in the late 20th century, our national infrastructure and accompanying energy policy has historically been geared toward large and centralised models of generation and supply. The development of such infrastructure has precluded re-entry for local authorities, small businesses, communities, and new suppliers. So localities have been increasingly airbrushed out of the market. And the same can be said, we argue, of public services. So I unpacked this in some detail in order to take us back really to first principles and to draw a link with the policy theme of this session. So many policies, we believe, are crafted within this failed paradigm. They attempt to temporarily fix the shortfalls of a centralized state and a liberalized market, but do not fundamentally transform them to ensure that our political economy, including communities, institutions, and industry, will truly benefit in the long term. So this is really the setting from which our initial work on the energy market emerged. Our 2011 paper, Re-Energizing Our Communities, which is the image up on the screen there, called for a crucial shift in policymaking, that individual consumers should be empowered to become collective owners and producers of their energy production. As consumers alone, individuals and communities do not have the opportunity to participate in the market and therefore really benefit from, say, part ownership of a local energy production asset. This doesn't just apply to energy, but across public and private services and assets too. Ownership and participation are key principles and can deliver long-term social, environmental, and economic benefits. So we argue that a paradigm shift in the way in which policymakers and indeed wider society approach the issue of, say, fuel poverty, increased bills, a consolidated energy market, and so forth, really needs to take place. So, what is the role of government? Now, I spent 4 weeks of the summer in Germany. This was my Winston Churchill Memorial Trust Fellowship, visiting a number of regions and community energy projects. So I thought I'd just briefly draw on a couple of my experiences there in order to answer this question. So this is Marcus. Marcus, with the community of St. Peter in southwest Germany, now manages a cooperative biomass facility and district heating network. You might not be able to see in great detail on this picture, but he is standing next to a map which marks out a number of buildings that are connected to this network. So this includes the local church, the tourist information office, residential houses, small businesses, the school, and the public swimming pool. All are members of the cooperative and directly benefit from the heating that the biomass facility provides. So what for this community was and is the role of government? This was very much a bottom-up, citizen-led project, which later gained support from the local mayor and municipality. So for Marcus, the role of government is to provide a policy framework that enables such projects to flourish, to remove the barriers, provide incentives, and where appropriate, to provide an intermediary platform to broker the right partners and the right conditions for success. So another example, Verka, one of the largest municipally owned utility companies in Germany. The state utility company owns the majority of the local production and supply markets and also takes care of the distribution of the electricity and the heat. They aim to produce enough renewable electricity by 2025 to meet the requirements of the entire city of Munich. Incredibly ambitious and certainly to be applauded. But in their present activity and forthcoming strategy, there is actually very little room for community-owned energy or community participation. There is a danger that established state-led models and ways of working, even if in many respects hugely successful, can exclude the community and form a local monopoly. I want to suggest that we need to adopt Marcus's view, where the state plays a role, and this could mean a central role in ownership and of local energy assets and utilities, but must serve to dissolve the barriers, facilitate and incentivize projects like community energy, and broker fruitful partnerships to enable community energy to grow. Without this, I don't think the much-needed paradigm shift will take place. And this leads us quite nicely onto our most recent paper. In the community renewables economy, we argue that partnerships are integral to dissolving many of the barriers faced by communities to enter into the production markets and in acquiring an ownership stake. Before unpacking our policy recommendations, I will just briefly highlight a few key points that emerged from the research. We partnered with the Sustainable Community Energy Network, who I believe are here today, a research institute based in Edinburgh, in order to draw on a UK-wide community energy survey that they had conducted within the past 2 years. Through this research, we were able to reveal some of the most significant barriers, and I just put them up on the screen here. I won't go through them in detail. You're probably very familiar with them. But planning, I think, was most notably one of the most significant barriers of them all. Despite these barriers, SEEN's research shows that community energy capacity has increased by over 1,300% to nearly 60 megawatts over the last decade. By 2020 on current trends, they estimate that the sector will grow ninefold to 550 megawatts. However, we argue that with leadership from local authorities and with the right national policy framework, the sector is capable of delivering a fifth of total renewable energy capacity by 2020, so equivalent to, say, 5.27 gigawatts. This is 89 times its current capacity. So a particular key to the significant growth of the number and capacity of community energy projects, we argue, is joint ownership, where communities are able to partner with private developers, public sector entities or businesses which have greater capacity, resource, and financial capability. So by joint ownership or joint venture arrangements, we refer to projects where the community has an ownership stake, where communities have been able to partner with developers or local authorities, for example. Starting up and scaling up has been much, much easier. Community energy held in several projects already accounts for a fairly large share of the total community renewables capacity. 20.6 megawatts of community-owned projects are owned jointly with commercial developers through shares in projects under 50 megawatts. We highlight a number of examples of such models within the report, which I should say can be downloaded for free from our website. And we've heard many of them this morning. So I just want to return, not go through them in detail here, but return to the policy focus and ask how government can respond. At the outset, I mentioned that for Marcus, the role of government is to provide a policy framework that enables such projects to flourish, to remove the barriers, provide incentives, and where appropriate, to provide an intermediary platform to broker the right partners and the right conditions for success. In our community renewables report, we have broadly worked with this approach and have identified 6 key areas and recommendations that government, local and national, can take forward and support. Now, I must mention that these 6 areas are not exhaustive, but are the ones included within our most recent paper to respond to the barriers that we've set out there. So the first, incentivize the joint ownership of community energy. With the proposed extension to the feed-in tariff capacity threshold for community projects, we recommended that DEC carefully consider the definition of community within this and ensure that joint ownership models, community-private or community-public partnerships are included within that. And a consultation we recommended is perhaps needed to identify exactly what this model would entail. Second, broker partnership opportunities between communities and local authorities, developers and businesses. Government can play a role in brokering such partnerships. We have recommended in the report that the Community Benefit Register could be harnessed to encourage not only benefit schemes, but opportunities for joint ventures with communities. We suggest that DEC could or should commission an external body to set up a matchmaking portal, for example, for communities and developers, but the link to community benefit arrangements and the acknowledgement that these could be far more innovative and radical should be recognized. Third, profile leading local authorities. As part of the government's role in providing leadership, and as many of the barriers, particularly regarding planning, are incurred at a local level, DEC must partner with the Department of Communities and Local Government to highlight the local authorities that are really facilitating local and community energy. Collective switching schemes have now also been adopted by 150 councils and are quickly increasing in popularity. This provides an ideal opportunity for councils to also communicate any community share offers or partnership opportunities for community energy projects to their residents, and therefore to act as an intermediary platform for much more sustainable solutions to fuel poverty and the hiking costs of energy bills. Fourth, encourage local institutions to act as financial intermediaries. Now, by this we don't mean that local authorities need to cough up more cash, but there are a number of opportunities across a range of local institutions, including church, housing associations, businesses, and public authorities, to leverage additional funds. Local councils, in partnership with neighbourhood forums, for example, could play a central role in scoping out the various opportunities for additional seed funding and available assets. Fifth, dissolve the barriers faced by communities in the planning process. We have recommended that CLG work with DEC to nationally standardise all planning and consent application forms, processes, and corresponding paperwork for local energy projects. Social value and proportionality, which has already been mentioned today, must be woven into the planning system. Additional support should be given, for example, to community groups that deliver significant social outcomes, and their size should be accounted for. We need to create not only a level playing field in the planning process, but a bias toward the community and social value. And alongside this, government, local and national, must work with the new neighbourhood forums and the corresponding plans. Of the community rights granted through the Localism Act, neighbourhood planning has achieved the highest uptake. This provides a perfect opportunity, again, to pilot things like local energy development plans and to incorporate energy into the neighbourhood plans and integrate them into their forthcoming prospectus. And then the final one, enable wider participation. We also recommended in the paper that community commissions should be piloted by government and partners, which should serve to draw together a random representative sample of people from a given neighbourhood to answer the question, how can communities become more engaged with their local energy production? This group would meet over the course of a few months, have the opportunity to invite in speakers and advisors, and crucially would have the power to form their own local policy recommendations, which the local authority would have a duty to accept. So really trying to extend the model beyond those who are interested in energy alone to the wider community. And a similar model has been put in place in Australia and has worked really successfully. So just to conclude, some next steps. Our research is very much focused on community energy projects in and of themselves, their benefits, potential, and capacity. But we mustn't forget that the energy market entails much more than the individual generation schemes. The potential for communities to become part of the wider local market to, for example, encourage demand for their generated energy and in supplying it locally, alongside a range of other players, is potentially hugely beneficial, not just for community energy, but also the local economy and the transformation of the UK's energy infrastructure. This can seem like a large leap rather than a step in terms of where we want to go from here, but there are incremental measures that can be harnessed in order to push this in the right direction. It might be, for example, that new policies like Ofgem's Licence Light is one such opportunity. Community energy must be viewed as this wider picture, as part of wider reforms to our energy market and infrastructure, and not just as an ad hoc sector that exists only outside of the market. With this paradigm shift, and with these recommendations for policy and other incremental measures, we might at last seize the opportunity to create a market that benefits all. Thank you.